Hi friends, in one of the video, I have already high level explained what is Atompshere API, how to use Atompshere API connector objects. In case if you haven't seen that video, I can just provide a link in the description of this video. In today's video, we are going to cover about the Atompshere component metadata API. So this component metadata API has a lot of advantages. We can get a lot of insights in about your components. So let's see how we can work with this component metadata. So there is already kind of article also published on this by Boomi also. But we will just high level look at what we can get from this component metadata object. So you can see that component metadata object, it represents summary information about the component in the service. Okay, it just only it is not going to give the component data. When I say component data, what does mean by component data? For example, you have a process. Process component data is basically means that, for example, if you go to any of the process, the component data is basically mean that this one. This is it's not going to give this shape. This shape only gives you a metadata about what is the component ID, who has created it, when was created it, and what type of component this one. Like this is kind of metadata it will give. But if you are looking for component data, then you can use a component object instead of component metadata object. So what is the advantage of we get the component metadata object is there are the Boomi already provided. There are a lot of use cases where we can, but those things are not limited. But if you look at the component metadata, here are the few use cases Boomi has given. General tips for using component metadata objects. So we can use some kind of filters, like what are the deleted components you can see, what are the current, like what is the latest version, and get current component name for an ID. So by using the component ID, you can get the component details, like what is the component ID, and for given component, you can get all the component versions, and you can get all versions for a component, get all current component versions, get current components in a specific folder, get all changes made by user during a specific time frame, and also you can use this as an example, like where if generally in a Boomi, right, to save the licensing, we will use the connections from a common folder. You can write up a process that displays what are the processes that were not being using from the common connections folder. So that will give you to review the licensing of the component connections, and then if you can reduce it, you can reuse the connections. Like this, there are a lot of use cases has been provided, but there are still you can get a lot more use cases. These are like few of the use cases only. So for you want to list out all the processes, all the connections, all the components, like you can get all the by specific component, you can get everything. Even you can get subtype also. So subtypes is connectors. So like you want to see how many connectors are there for HTTP client connector. This example shows HTTP client connector. I did not use the RESTIsh implementation because the RESTIsh implementation, we might need to use HTTP client connector that might charge an extra license, but Atompshere API connector, you can use that. It won't be counted against the license. It will be, you can use as many number of connections you want that will still considered as a platform internal API connections. So you can see like specific folder. Okay, get all connection components not in a specific folder. That was the use case I was telling. You can use some common connections created folder, and if any of the deployed processes are not referring from the connections, you can able to retrieve those things. Deleted components. There are a lot of high level use cases already been derived here, but there are still one of the use case what I can think of it, maybe if any of the components that is going to expire the deployed certificates, maybe you might not be using this component, but there are other components available in deployed objects. if any of the certificates are expiring in next 1 month or something, you can send out an email notifications to the admin so that they will take an action on those. So these are the kind of things you can be able to achieve this with Atompshere API connector. But we're just going to see how metadata, we'll just only look at this component metadata object, how we can be able to utilize this one. So as the document says, like you have an object, you can query the get and query operations. Initially, it was not have any create operation, but I think create component option also available for not for component metadata. There is also a component object because as part of this ChatGPT AI initiatives, right? Like there are few or AI icons has been provided. So where for them it's automatically need to create those components. That's where they might have used the component API to create these components on as and when required as per the questions we ask. So initially only we have an export option, but we have now the component create option also there. Maybe we can leverage those component create options to migrate any of the integrations from other integrations to Boomi integrations. We can write some kind of scripts and we can create all those things because Boomi doesn't have the capability till now to import the processes. So basically, if you want to create any of the processes that we created, export those processes and take a backup or managed by the external revision version control system, and then get those things back again, import it back again. So those kind of things is still not been provided. Boomi explicitly wanted to use their own revision control. So probably we hope expect it might come down. So these are the component fields. These are the component fields, like high level it gives you what is the component ID, what was the version, what is the name, what is the type, and subtype. So subtype again, it internally refers to the connector object. So that we have made a video on the connector object. So I'll be using the connector object. What are the values, possible values of the connector object? With that value, I'm going to make a filter and will be able to show you how we can filter all these things. And these are the deleted, current version, folder name, all these things. So these are the type of components that will be able to see. So this field is basically certificate. It basically means that it is X50 certificate. This is the typical list of components has been listed here. But let's see what and all operations is supported. Get is supported, query is supported, rest of the support, update is supported, but rest of the things are not supported here. Okay, I have already created these things. So let's review those things, what I created. So in this case, I have shown how we can pass a query. All those things I'm displaying as in web services. All those web services, I'm extended the web services functionalities to filter using the query parameters. So first what I'm doing, I'm not passing any input parameter. I'm just trying to filter. I'm just going to query the Atompshere API connector and result will be showed as an HTML here. So after the result showed in HTML, what I'm trying to do is I called a sub process here. So the process call basically checks whether any query parameter, because whenever you pass any query parameters to the web services, that by default those things is available to the Boomi process as query underscore the type you passed. Query underscore the type you pass. So here I'm going to pass type as a query parameter. So that will be available as a dynamic process property, query underscore type. I'm just checking if it is type is passed, I'm going to query based on the type only. If subtype also pass, I'll query all these connector objects based on these two combinations. I'll filter by type and I filter by subtype. For example, if I wanted to type connector action, like what type of connector you want to filter. So you want to filter HTTP. So you'll be able to see both these things, or you'll be able to filter it. If none of the query filters pass, like I'm going to go and get the basic things. If you look at the connector configuration, the basic one without any query parameters. So this was same as previous video where we have set up the connection configuration. I just use the API key and pass the API key over here to establish the connection. I selected the query as an action, and then I imported operation. I selected the component metadata. Since I want to completely query everything, I did not make any filter here. Similarly, it's kind of a copy of things I perform. So where I have defined in this as a subtype. So type as a filter here, I selected the equals. So for this type, I pass the value or the parameters over here. So that this parameter is going to whatever the query parameters that you want to pass from the browser or from the client, you can apply the filter with that. Similarly, if you pass two query parameters, you can just filter the results based on these two combinations. So, and then after that, I created some kind of a common profile for easily rendering purpose. So I just use components XML. So I just created one component XML. I made this component as a repeatable, and then it will be translated into one document per one record per one document, and then it will return to the main process. Once it returns to the main process, what I'm doing, I'm going to combine it based on the repeating element. So all these documents will be combining as a one document after this data process. So after that, what I'm doing, I'm using the NextSLT transformation. So this transformation is basically displayed in terms of an HTML format. So basically, I'm just going to define Atompshere API components metadata, and then you can just use it for each. And for every component, I'm just going to define all these values, and then I'm just displaying these things as a HTML. So now let's see how it works in action. Let's go to, I think I might have already this thing. Let me get the endpoint URL. So let's go to the process reporting. Okay, let's go to data management. I think my system is taking time to get those things. I go to shared web server. Let me take this base URL. So you can see since I used it last time, it was coming like this. Okay, I'm just going to use query component data. Okay, so this is the query component data. So let's see when the process got triggered or not. Okay, the process got triggered here. How many connections it is going to display? Okay, it's just still running because it takes some time because it's going to be extracting a lot of components. Hopefully it will not time out. Okay, you can see it has written 172 documents. The process has been completed, and you can see all these things has been nicely rendered out. So like I just only put some of the process, whether it is type of what type I did not, subtype I did not include it. But if you just want to include subtype, it just matter of just updating that XSLT that makes, you can see a lot of processes you can see. Okay, there are a lot of processes, but you want to filter it based on the process, right? What I can do because I have defined the type, right? So if I want to filter it based on the connector action and the connector of type HTTP. So this makes you to filter, both filters will be applied, connector action and HTTP. In my account, these many HTTP client connectors are there. You can see this is chart, this is operation names, all these operation names, all these things are connector actions are operation names. And for example, if you want to filter only the process, you can see how many processes are there. So as many number of times we are just hitting, and it's just going to show us the results. So every time, like depends on the filter we applied, you can see it is reducing the number of records also here. You can just go through this one. For example, just have only 6 documents. You can see what request it came because it comes as a document, dynamic document properties. So those things will not be visible to you because empty document will be empty here because I did not even capture the log also. But you can just typically go and see what kind of process state it has taken. You can use actions and then process state. It will show you what shapes it has been executed. You can see it just says type exist. Yes, because that's the advantage if you get it. If you label the names right of a decision, it gives you able to quickly understand your process also. So the type is exist. Yes, I and labels also it should be meaningful. When type exists, when I make it as a true means it type is exist, and similarly subtype also exists. When it make it as a true means again subtype also exists, and then it went to the connector. So you can see the one here basically stands for this connector got executed one time, and this map got executed 6 times, and return document got executed 6 times. But this is the data process got executed 6 times, and it combined and it sends only one document as an input to the data process. That's where the transformations is happening. The XML, the HTML, XML to HTML transformation is happening. So that's where the combining, you can drill down to your process state, how many times and each shape, how many seconds it has executed. You will be able to see all these things. You can see the connector alone takes 4 seconds. So entire process time, connector alone takes just 4 seconds. Remaining all are like 0.0 milliseconds. Overall process takes 5 seconds. Okay, with this, we were able to learn how this Atompshere API connector object components metadata are able to use it, how to expose the web services, and how we can pass the query parameters to filter the data further. So generally query parameters will be always passed with question mark. After the question mark always follows the name and value. Always question marks after question mark, always follow name and value. For example, if you say connector action. See, here the type is equal to connector action is a type is equal to connector action. Always follows name value. Name is type, value is connector hyphen action. So both are separated with is equal to. So the query string after question mark, whatever we call it as a query string. The query string is basically a combination of multiple query parameters. So one query parameter separated with or delimited with ampersand. So with another query parameters. So it's basically called as a query string. One query string can have multiple query parameters. Each query parameters is delimited with ampersand, and each query parameter value has a parameter name and value. Both are delimited by is equal symbol. So this is a standard URL pattern, nothing specific to Boomi. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to cover in this video. So I think that will be helpful. Thank you for watching this video.